So what is the workflow function in Microsoft Dynamics NAV? Let's have a look. So the workflow, like I just said, will connect business process tasks performed by different users. So these can be automatic tasks, we can have user tasks, and we can also have approvals. Approval is, of course, a very important type of workflow, which, by the way, we will cover in a separate module after this one. Now, a workflow in Microsoft Dynamics is based on events. So when something happens, then there will be a response, and the response can be based on a condition. And like I just said, it will then be a response. So for example, here in the print screen, you can see an example of the approval of a sales document. So if the approval of a sales document is requested, so that's an event. So the user runs the approved document function, for example, then there's a condition that should be met. In this case, the condition should be that the document has the order type and the status of open. And the response is that the system will then check if the customer's credit limit is exceeded. You see, so a very nice example of what a workflow can be, and especially the three different components of the workflow. So let's look at these a little bit more in detail. So each workflow is triggered by an event. So it will trigger workflow responses. An approval, for example, can be an event. An incoming document that is created can be an event, and so on. Now, we can use conditions. So a condition that moderates the workflow, you could say, like, for example, the condition is that the pending approvals should be 0, or the document type can be a condition, and so on. And that will then trigger the workflow response. So the responses which are the result of workflow events. So for example, post the sales of the purchase document in the background, send the approval request for the record and create a notification, and so on. So these are the three different components, and we will have a look at them in detail in the application. But just to give you already a glance of how such a workflow looks like, let's go to the application. So I will use the search function to go to the workflows and more specifically the workflow templates, because there we already have a couple of predefined templates that I can use to show how such a workflow looks like. And if I go to sales documents, let me take a standard approval workflow. So this one, for example, you can see now the three different components. And so let me make a little bit more space here. Events, conditions, and responses. And so this is a workflow, again, typically used to approve sales orders. So the first step, so the event that will trigger, is the approval of a sales document is requested. Like we just saw on the print screen, the type should be order and the status open. And then we have a record restriction. So the restriction in this case is that the document status is set to pending approval. So that is the response. An approval request is sent to someone. We will come back to this later, and a notification might also be sent. You see, so that's a typical response where you see that one user will request the approval, and the system will automatically send the approval request to other users. So then, if the request is approved, then the system will check if pending approvals is 0. Based on that, it will remove the record restriction. If pending approvals is greater than 0, another approval request is sent, and so on. You see? So a very nice example of how a workflow looks like in NAV. Different events included in the workflow that are all using specific conditions and that are all triggering specific responses. That's what workflow is in the application.